There are also conflicting reports that these are perhaps two terrorists, so still information is coming out, but we know for sure that at least one terrorist is killed. And already, as we saw right after the Tel Aviv shooting, ramming and stabbing attack, Hamas very quick to praise this attack, calling it a response within the framework of the continuous retaliation to Israel's aggression against Jenin. So obviously they're trying to frame this as a retaliatory attack to what happened in Jenin. And in addition, in the response by the Hamas spokesman Abdel Latif El-Kano, saying that the guns of the revolutionaries and the resistance will remain open against the occupation and its settlers. And so this does not mean that this is a Hamas organized attack, but indeed the terror group quick to praise the attack as additional information continues to pour out.
I want to bring in Colonel in the Reserves, Alon Eviatar, Palestinian affairs expert and former advisor to COGAT. And Alon, as we're talking about the context of what is unfolding here, this shooting, a fatal shooting, happening just days after the end of that 48-hour operation by the IDF in Jenin against terror infrastructure. Talk to us about the timing of what is unfolding, the context right now.
Exactly, Benita. I can tell you that this area, or this road, is known as a place that there were a series of terror attacks over there during the last period. I can assume that the terrorists were influenced by the wide incitement by Hamas that we heard during the last weeks. I think that we can show that we can see, that after the military operation in Jenin, there is a wide campaign by Hamas, especially by Hamas in the West Bank, in order to push outside terrorists which belong or to Hamas or to another Palestinian terror organizations, in order to achieve, I would say, achievement, national achievement, and to kill Jews, and something that Hamas need to, I would say, to respond to the military operation which was happening in Jenin. I can remember that, after the military operation in Jenin, Hamas called to the Palestinian public to go out everywhere in Tel Aviv and in the West Bank and doing terror attacks. This kind of terror attacks which happened last hour, this is the kind of terror attacks that you cannot know previously, because if those terrorists, we are speaking about maybe 2 or 3 or maybe 1, but those terrorists start or decide to take a car and take their gun and shoot on the roads, on settlers or soldiers, without any previous information, without any clue in the media or in the websites and so on. And it's very difficult to prevent those terror attacks previously. So I can assume that we are in the middle of investigation by the military agencies, right. But in the end of the day, I can assume that we have to challenge those terror attacks which will be happened or try to happen during the next weeks or so.
Alon, stay with us. I'm going to bring in Guy Azriel, our correspondent here in studio, for an update about the developments on the ground. Obviously, a breaking news story. We know one terrorist is dead. Any clarity yet on any other potential accomplice? What is known in terms of any searches or manhunts underway as we speak?
Yes, so more updates are coming in, and obviously this is an event that just concluded less than 10 minutes ago. According to the information that we're getting right now, the terrorist approached a civilian patrol next to the settlement of Kedumim, opened fire towards that civilian patrol. The patrol officer was not actually hurt in that incident and has returned fire towards the terrorist, who then fled the scene with his car, where he arrived at the Jat junction, where he did shoot again towards a group of Israelis. The person who unfortunately died was among that group of Israelis, and we know that IDF forces who were right there shot back at the terrorist and eventually took him down. That is the latest that we have.
Alon, I'm going to come back to you, because the Home Front Command had ordered residents to remain in their homes and lock their doors and their windows. You know this region well. What kind of messaging is happening right now for the settlement and surrounds?
So far, we cannot declare that the event or the terror attack was over and finished. I think that still the IDF forces are looking for another terrorist, which maybe can going around over there, maybe want to do another terror attack, and in order to prevent any option of another terror attack over there in this area, the immediately order to the residents over there in the settlement or around the settlement is to keep down or to close their windows and stay at homes till the IDF will publish another or new declaration that everybody can go out. A lot of forces with special units, with, I would say, sophisticated equipment and intelligence elements are looking for those or this cell.
Right.
And we are still waiting for the for new news. But this is the automatically, I would say, an order when kind of terror attacks happened in the same way.
Colonel in the Reserves, Alon Eviatar, thank you so much for joining us for this breaking news edition. We are going out for a short break. Before we do that, a quick update from Ariel Osaran.
Yeah, so IDF Home Front Command saying that residents in Kedumim are not required to stay indoors and hunker down, that the suspected infiltration has been ruled out, and residents of Kedumim are allowed to move in and out freely.
Ariel, guys, stay with us. We're going to go out for a very short break. If you're just joining us now, it's Breaking News Edition. A terror attack in the West Bank. One Israeli man has been shot dead in the settlement of Kedumim. A terrorist is dead. Our breaking news coverage continues after a short break. Stay tuned. This is I-24 News.
Comencé a trabajar en I-24 News en el año 2013. Ese mismo año, como parte de la serie de documentales Reportage Insight, viajé a la Argentina para entrevistar al fiscal Alberto Nisman, que había determinado inconstitucional el memorándum de entendimiento entre Argentina e Irán firmado por la expresidenta Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. Estaba relacionado con el atentado a la AMIA de 1994, que dejó un saldo de 85 muertos y más de 100 heridos.
Todo el material con el que trabajamos a diario.
El 18 de enero del año 2015 ocurre un suceso impactante. El fiscal Alberto Nisman es encontrado muerto en el baño de su departamento con un tiro en la cabeza. Y lo que todo el mundo se preguntaba, ¿fue un suicidio o un homicidio? La Corte Suprema Argentina dictaminó que fue un asesinato.
La única solución es hacer como el Mossad hizo con Eichmann, traerlos acá y una vez que están bien.
¿Qué hay detrás de esta historia tan interesante? Encubrimiento a terroristas, conspiraciones internacionales, búsqueda de la verdad. ¿Algún día sabremos la verdad? En los últimos 7 años, para el magazine News 24 en español, que se transmite en I-24 News, realicé más de 40 informes relacionados con el tema AMIA Nisman Irán. Un tema que tiene todos los condimentos para que un canal internacional de noticias como I-24 News siga investigando hasta que algún día se esclarezca la verdad.
Our breaking news coverage continues. A terror attack in the West Bank. One Israeli man has been shot dead in the settlement of Kidumim. IDF medical teams had treated him on the scene. He passed away just a short while ago. The terrorist has been shot dead. Still with me in studio, Middle East correspondent Ariel Osaran and correspondent Guy Azriel. This is obviously a developing situation. Bring us up to speed on what is confirmed about what happened with this terror attack.
Right, Benita. So still not a lot officially confirmed. We're basing a lot of this from initial information coming out from the scene. But according to at least official information, just about an hour ago, this incident began with terrorists approaching the settlement, West Bank settlement of Kidumim with a car. Exiting the car, opening fire towards Israelis there. At least one security guard was among those Israelis. The security guard and others in the area returned fire. Then the terrorist enters his car, flees to the nearby Jad Junction, where there he gets out of his car, opens fire at a group of Israelis there, begins to flee, and in the shootout, he is killed by a group of soldiers that is located in the area. As of now, we know one Israeli pronounced dead in the scene, terrorist neutralized and killed as well. Initially, there was a suspected infiltration siren in the community of Kidumim. IDF Home Front Command initially ordered for citizens to remain in their homes and lock their doors, but since then, they have issued a statement saying that all movement restrictions have been lifted and that the infiltration suspicion has been confirmed to not be true.
And this brings to 25 the number of Israelis killed in terror attacks this year alone. For more reaction, we now bring in Yishai Fleischer, spokesperson for the Jewish community in Hebron and advisor to Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. So the death toll of 25 Israelis killed in this region just this year alone in terror attacks. Your reaction to what has happened in just the last hour?
Well, we of course mourn the death of an Israeli who's been attacked by jihadist terrorism, and we hope that we're happy that the IDF has already gotten the terrorist himself, but it's not enough. We have to also dry up the swamp of terrorism, of jihadism that has grown within Judea and Samaria, within also the cities of Israel, and is getting a lot of tailwind from the Palestinian Authority, from Hamas, and from what I even see on Twitter and on social media, there's a lot of global justification to kill Israelis, supposedly because we're in occupation of our ancestral homeland, but really it's because of anti-Semitism and jihadism, which seeks to occupy, take over this whole land. And we got to root out those places, get into those places and clean them out. And if we're not going to do that, then we're going to keep on facing attacks over and over again. And of course, the amassment of illegal weapons, the Israeli police estimates at least 400,000 illegal weapons just in the Israeli Arab cities. And nobody's even talking about what's going on under the PA, which is, in favor of attacks on Jews, as their own statements in the last few days. So we got to take out those weapons, and we got to take out the jihadists, and thereby bring back safety to the average Israelis and also to average Arabs who want to live in concert with Israel and don't want to see jihadism take them and their children's lives.
Yishai, Hamas was very quick to respond to the terror attack just a short while ago, praising the shooting, calling it a natural reaction to crimes in Jenin. Would you have expected that this week, that IDF operation in Jenin to root out terror infrastructure would have helped quell tensions in the region? Does it surprise you that there has been an attack so shortly after this two-day operation in Jenin?
Well, I mean, I respect the enemies of Israel, and I know that they mean business. When they call for the destruction of Israel, they mean it. And if you attack them in Jenin and start to begin to root out the jihadism there, then other homegrown jihadists are going to, attack, and they have weapons. We've allowed them to amass these weapons, and so they're going to use them. So no, I'm not surprised at all. We're in for a longer conflict. We have to accept that. It's going to be a longer conflict, and we're going to have to take the time and the effort to really take back those illegal weapons, root out the jihad preachers and jihad schools and jihad school books, etc. And if we're going to want to establish real order here, it's going to take some time. We've allowed the situation to fester, and so it's not surprising at all that there are attacks by the enemies of Israel. They sense that this government, this army, and this time is such that people want to start really getting into those jihad nests and rooting them out, and so they're going to attack. This is a conflict. I don't minimize the strength of our enemies. I don't think that they're weak. I think that they're strong and dedicated, and that's why we have to be even stronger and more dedicated to defeat them.
Yishai Fleischer, spokesperson for the Jewish community in Hebron and advisor to Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, thank you for speaking to us on this Breaking News edition.
Thank you.
And still with the story, we now bring in Nadav Matzner, the deputy spokesperson for the emergency organization MADA, and we want to know exactly what you can share about what happened on the scene in terms of emergency response to the shooting just a short while ago in the West Bank. What can you tell us, Nadav?
Yes, hello. Less than 1 hour ago, we got a phone call in a 101 emergency phone line about a person who got shot near Kdumim. MDA, EMTs and paramedics in a bulletproof ambulance rushed to the scene, and with the IDF medical forces, they performed CPR, but unfortunately they have declared the death of the injured person who was shot by the terrorist.
And Nadav, have you got any clarity or update for us on the possibility of another injury as well? Details are emerging, conflicting reports, anything you can tell us?
In the beginning of the event, we got a few phone calls that we thought there were probably 2 victims, but after they reached the scene with the IDF, we find only 1 wounded, and the second one that we thought was injured, he was okay and didn't get injured at all. So in the end, there was only 1 victim. Unfortunately, we had to declare his death, but only 1 in this terror attack.
Nadav Matzner, MADA Deputy Spokesperson, thank you for that update. Appreciate you speaking to us on this Breaking News edition. And still with me in studio, correspondent Guy Azriel. So a manhunt is underway, although we know that 1 terrorist has been killed. Any clarity yet on any accomplices? What kind of searches are happening right now? What is the latest development in terms of what's happening across the West Bank right now?
Yeah, no information about accomplices at this point. It seems that this was 1 person in that car that was easy to identify for the IDF forces who eventually took him down. So if there was another person in that car, they would have seen that very clearly. The cars have obviously been stopped. I want to just recap to our viewers what sort of week we've been through here in Israel. Just yesterday, a shooting attack near Mount Gerizim. A day before that, on Tuesday, that horrible ramming and stabbing attack in Tel Aviv, injuring at least 8 Israelis, a Palestinian who was here illegally, ramming into a group of Israelis at the bus stop in the center of Tel Aviv, plowing into people standing there and then getting out of the car, stabbing the wounded and looking for more victims before he was luckily gunned down by a civilian. And that comes just a day after another stabbing attack in the city of Bnei Brak. And amid all of that, that IDF operation, that 48 hours IDF operation in the city of Jenin, yes, the largest scale such ground operation in the northern West Bank over the past 15 years, but not one that would hurt the motivation of these terror groups, of these lone terrorists to execute more terror attacks. I think the IDF and any commentators were very clear about that, the fact that this operation was meant to harm the infrastructure of the terrorists in Jenin, to allow more freedom of movement to the IDF as it goes to hunt those terrorists who flee there. That was a safe haven for these terrorists. But the idea was, or at least the understanding was, that this is not going to stop the terrorists from executing more attacks. We've seen a wave of terror before the Jenin operation, and we are seeing more attacks after Jenin. This is not a result of Jenin. This is an ongoing wave of terror that Israel is dealing with. Jenin was an epicenter of terror. That was a big hub, including weapons and terrorists that were in that city, in the refugee camp. So IDF did a very surgical operation there, killing 12 terrorists in the city, but many of them fled. So once the IDF troops pulled out, the refugee camp filled again with civilian population, but also with many terror operatives who continue to operate out of there.
In terms of the reaction to the developments just this afternoon, the head of the Samaria Council, Yossi Dagan, is calling for a crushing response from the government, saying this shooting attack illustrates that the terrorist organizations are trying us again and again, even after the operation in the northern West Bank. Talk to us about the pressure right now for the Israeli response. Civilians are being killed, 25 in the space of just this year. What is the pressure for real action right now from Israel?
It's obviously a terrible situation, and we do have the most right-wing government we've ever had here. You have Bezalel Smotrich of the Religious Zionism as a minister who is also part of the defense ministry. You have Gallant from the Likud as the defense minister. You have Itamar Ben-Gvir as the national security minister. You have all these persons who are hawkish, and Israel is trying to do whatever it can. It is not going to end with one short 48 hours operation. If Israel wants a more extensive operation, of course, it can do that. That is what was done in the mid-2000s when Israel eventually had enough with an ongoing terror wave that saw buses explode, wedding halls, many other terrible incidents in Israel during the second Intifada. This is not something that Israel is looking to do right now. Israel has more cooperation with the Palestinian Authority in other parts of the West Bank, in Ramallah and Bethlehem, in other areas that are not as hot as the northern West Bank. And this is an area that is an issue. It is also an issue for Israel politically, because it's an ongoing situation that is not going to be resolved anytime soon. I think many political leaders should think whether this is a time for a unity government to confront this terror wave together, as Israel is, of course, at the same time dealing with so many internal issues that are dividing the country while needing to deal with this. And we saw this yesterday, so many police forces having to deal with mass protests in Tel Aviv while Israel is fighting such a major wave of terror at the same time.
Correspondent Guy Azriel, thank you so much for that update. Earlier in studio, we had our Middle East correspondent, Ariel Osran, and again, thank you to Alon Eviatar. If you're just joining us, breaking news edition, a terror attack in the West Bank. One Israeli man has been shot dead in the settlement of Kidumim. IDF medical teams had treated him on the scene, but he passed away a short while ago. The terrorist has been shot dead. This killing brings to 25 the number of Israelis murdered in terror attacks in the country this year alone. And that is where we wrap up this breaking news edition. Our coverage continues. I'm Benicia Levine in Tel Aviv, and this is Breaking News.